Hi, I'm Tim Von Rieden here at cgcookie.com, and welcome to the Creating a Turnaround Based Off a Concept Art Piece tutorial. So earlier this week, I worked on a character concept piece, and I wanted to show you guys that when you're finished, how you can take that and create a front, side, and back view turnaround of that character. So originally, it was about 3.5 hours, and I condensed it down to about 15 minutes, where I'm going to go through and explain myself, and I'm using the same brush and the same technique throughout, but I wanted to show you the tips and tricks I use to create that turnaround. So with that, let's get started. So here's the concept piece that I finished, and I'm going to be doing the turnaround of. So I'm creating an 11 by 17, 17 being the width, canvas, and I'm going to create the front, side, and back views based on this. So starting off, I'm doing the underlying anatomy to kind of get a good sizing reference for his body. And doing a turnaround is all about working in halves. So you're going to see in a sec how I'm going to erase half of the anatomy structure that I'm decently satisfied with, and then just copy it over to the other side. So this is a really easy and quick way to save you time, and rather than having to draw out the entire body, it's just you only have to draw half of it, and it saves you that amount of time that you would spend drawing the other half. So then I'm going to turn that layer's opacity down, create a new layer, and do a very sketchy rough of the clothing outline on top of it. And I did the anatomy first to get a good sizing reference for his proportions and make sure that everything is looking okay for the modeler. And if you do have a modeler in mind and this is the concept, you should go ahead and apologize to him first for how meticulous and detailed a lot of the middle of this character is. And there's a lot of belts, a lot of like little nicks-nacks here and there, and you want to make sure that you get all of those in your turnarounds so it's easier for the modeler, because it's already going to be kind of a challenge. So the easier you can make it on him, the happier your modeler will be with you, and then hopefully in the end it'll turn out with a better outcome as well. So here I'm just using a solid brush with no opacity on it, and it is the standard circle brush, and I'm just taking that all over and just sketching out the entire form. So now here's another example where I copy half of that leg, and copy it over to the other side, and just replace. And here I'm going to zoom in for the face. And the reason I don't do a copy and paste for the face as well is because I think sometimes when you copy and paste the face, it looks a little strange, and it's much easier to just get a good reference of the face and then do it that way rather than trying to copy and paste it over. Now for the side view, I have to do the same thing with the anatomy first and get a good structure going, and then I'm going to turn that layer's opacity down and then draw the clothing right on top of it, just like on the front view. So now this is where it gets to be a little tricky, because the concept art piece is a front view and it's finished in a very flat front view. So doing the side, you're going to have to take a little bit of your imagination and imagine turning the actual character to the side and how these belts and what he's wearing will look like from the side. And then his face and hair, same thing. And then from here we can do the back view. And then this one's a little easier than the side because we can take the finished front view and erase certain things that wouldn't be seen on the back view, and then replace it with things that would be seen in the back view. So like here you can see I'm adding in the back of the shirt. You can see it hints at the back muscles. And then from here, since the back view was very easy to finish, we can go in and start actually detailing the final turnaround. So now this is the front view, and I'm taking that hard solid brush and I'm trying to create a clean line art, but it doesn't have to be perfect. The thing with turnarounds is you just want to make sure it's clean and crisp enough for clarification on what's going on and help the modeler see what you might not have made it so easy to see in the original concept art. So like all that belt and leather work that's going on in the middle, it's really not that complicated, and if you just break it down to the black line art, it's very simple actually. So now here is a great example of doing a copy and replace. So I'm doing one boot, and I'm going to make it look pretty nice, and then I'm just going to copy it over to the other side, and that would be the left boot. Just like that. I'm going to finish the hand. So now this is something that I probably should have done is I probably should have, oh yeah, that was a terrible nose. That's what happens when you copy and paste it over, you get some weird shapes going on. But for the hand, I was saying about how I should have done the hand without the glove on it first, and then copied it over to the other side and drawn the glove over it, rather than copying the hand with the glove over to the other side and then having to erase the glove. So now here for the face, you can see how I'm just going in and making sure that sizing is all right. And now for thinner lines, it's just usually to hint at something. So like you can see in the neck how I added those thin little lines to represent the muscles and throat, or all the muscles that are going on in the throat. And then same with the hair, I'll do thinner lines to kind of represent the thinner texture that hair has compared to like the solid clothing. And here I'll do some resizing before I get into the leather work. So now this is just very meticulous work and it's just time consuming, but just stick at it. I know it can be kind of tough, but just keep going and draw those lines. So even though I don't need to make it look perfect, I do want to hint at the detail that is going on inside of like the little pouch that he has on the front. So I'm going to draw that detail in as well, just to kind of help give the turnaround a nice cleaner feel to it, and to help out the modeler if he needed to see that for whatever reason. But really most of this would be done in the texture work after you unwrap the model, and then that's when you would really make the details look really nice. And you can see that I turned down the layer with the sketchy clothing on it. I just turned the opacity down so you can still see it well enough to create or draw on top of it. And then you can see with the armbands, I just did another copy and paste where I drew on one side and then copy and pasted it onto the other. So when you're doing a turnaround, just keep in the back of your mind when you can do that and save yourself time. Because turnarounds can be a very long process, and sometimes it's not the most fun. It's just a simple black and white line art all the way through of a concept art you already did, so you're already drawing it for the second time, and it's the same thing but simplified. And try not to zoom in too much, because then you'll get, well, at least for me, I get very paranoid about if it doesn't look perfect when it's zoomed in really close. So I like to stay zoomed out and just making sure that the detail's looking pretty well off from a distance and not worrying about how good it looks close up, because really it doesn't really matter. So like even here I feel like I'm a little too close and I probably should have pulled back just a little bit. But this is probably the most detailed part of the leather working, was the little pouch on the front. And another reason to add in these little details is because then your turnaround gives a nice clean feel to it too. And sometimes you want to be able to show off your turnarounds as well with the concept art piece. And if the turnaround is looking pretty sloppy compared to the final render, then it just makes the final render seem not quite as nice. Or it looks like the artist didn't take the time to really make the turnaround just as well done as the actual concept piece. So in here, just a little more copy and pasting to the other side, and then adding in the little details. And then once the front view is done, it'll be much easier to do the back and side view. It's just doing that very first one that'll be the toughest. And then the easiest will be the back view, because most of what we did in the front view can be copied over to the back view and then edited and modified to fit the back view. So here I took a stitching brush and I'm just going around adding just a small amount of detail to where the stitching would be shown. Then I'm going to move on to the back view. So then once this is finished, you can see how I turned off the layer that had the underlying opacity under it, and I just turned it off. So now you can see the clean finished version of the front view. And then I took that, copy and pasted it to the back view, and I flipped it so that the belts, they line up with how they would look from the back view compared to the front. And then from here, I just go in and erase things that indicate a front view and replace it with things that would be a back view, just like I did with the roughed out line art. So I added in the back muscles, the back of the elbows, back of the hair, and I'm just going in, and then now I'm editing the belt work on where you wouldn't see things from the front that you would see in the back. And then since the original concept art was a full front view, the back view is kind of yours to play with, and you can mess around with it as much as you want. So like here I'm adding in back pockets that I originally didn't plan for, but now that I'm actually being forced to think about what's in the back view of this character, I'm thinking about, well, what makes sense with the character with what he already has to him, and how can I make it feel similar enough to where it would fit in with the original concept. So then there we go. Now with the final back done, I turn the sketchy layer off as well, and then I move on to the side. So the side is a little bit more time consuming than the back, because the back I could take a lot of what I used for the front and just modify it to fit to the back. But for the side, I have to draw out a whole new line art from scratch. And the biggest trick with doing the side view is making it line up with the front view, and making sure that things like the bottom of the chin, the top of the shirt, things like the accessories, making sure that they line up and they're on a similar plane, so that the modeler, when he's looking at it at a front and side view, everything's matching up. And then for the actual arm, I like to kind of cut it off and then place it next to the side view. And that's because if you had the arm placed right on the side, you'd be covering a lot of the side of the body. And the modeler would need that to see what's going on, or if there's something under it. So I like to take the arm and just kind of remove it, and then have that there for the modeler if he wanted to model the arm from the side as well, and have that reference. And just like the back view, you're not going to be able to see the side view perfectly from the original concept art. So even though you can kind of see hints of what would be shown on the side, it's still up to you to kind of figure out how it would look from the side view. So things like the belts, you can kind of guess as to how they would wrap around and make it line up correctly. But some things wouldn't be able to be shown from the original concept art, so I'm just adding in things. Like this side lining, I didn't originally expect to be there, and this thing that's holding the belts together from the top belt. But you start to think about how these things would actually work, and you start adding things, and it adds to the piece. So then when you're finally done, you really feel like you have created a character that's in a complete 3D perspective. And here's just more of the tedious line working and getting all that leather detail working. I'm drawing the wonderful detailed pouch again. So like I said, I think this is zoomed in a little too much. I could probably pull it out a little bit and not spend so much time, because I think this was like 7 minutes on this little pouch alone, which is too much time for a turnaround. I need to keep moving, keep it fast, but still keep it clean. I mean, that's definitely something I want to emphasize, is even though I'm recommending working fast, you want to make sure it still looks clean. And you want to make sure that the modeler would be able to recognize and pull from your actual turnarounds. And then if you are actually the one modeling it, I mean, then you kind of know where everything would go, and you'd have an idea of what it would be. But it would still help you if you made it clean, because even then when you're modeling, I know that when I have done it in the past, if my turnarounds weren't that clean, I would almost be frustrated with myself. I'm like, oh, I should have taken that extra time to really make sure that the details were shown. And so I'm really recommend making sure that it's a clean, crisp line art. So here we go, I'm doing the final modifications. And then after that's done, then you have your complete turnaround. So I'm going to make the background a little bit more white. I turned it to gray originally to make it easier to draw on, and then I'm just going to add a slight gradient to the line art. So in the source files, I'm going to give you the turnaround with all the individual layers, and I'm going to name them all, and the original PSD of the concept art as well. So I hope you learned something, and thanks for watching.